Welcome to Building Boldly. I'm your host, Ariana, and today it's just me and you. I want to talk about recent updates, including a trip to Art Basel, the behind the scenes of launching this podcast this year, and a gentle end of year check-in with you about your own creative life. I want to acknowledge also that this has been a challenging year for many people with everything going on in our country and in our world, and offer that I truly believe that being in community is the best way to move through, and offer that Building Boldly is a creative community that you are welcome and supported. So thank you for being a part of our journey, and let's dive in. So I just got back from Art Basel, which I visited in Miami. It was my first time there, which feels pretty wild to say out loud because I've been hearing about it for years, obviously in the arts world, in my arts work. But the truth is that I always wanted to be invited to go. I wanted to either produce an event or be invited for a panel formally. But I just decided to go this year because I had been invited to a dinner and it just was available in my schedule. And I was like, you know what? Let me just go. And honestly, it was the best decision. So it was my first time there. If you haven't been, it's just this extraordinary weekend of events and activations, of course, great fairs, multiple fairs, and parties, like so many parties. So I want to highlight one really special highlight that happened to me when I was there. So I was walking around, going to one of the fairs, and I stop into this booth. And I asked, I love the work. I'm like, who's the artist? The gallery guy says his name is Brandon Hill. I'm like, okay, cool. So I keep walking around the fair. As I'm leaving, like hours later, like several hours later, I walk past this guy that I used to know from DC days. He's an artist. His name is Brandon. I'm like, oh my gosh, hi, how are you? So we know each other from Art All Night days. So Art All Night is the festival that I founded in Washington, like in my 20s. And he was one of my artists. He was like somebody's work that I curated. So this is this is a full decade and a little bit more later. And we see each other, we embrace. It's the first time we've seen each other in probably over a decade. And he's like, hey, I'm showing this year. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm showing. Let me take you to my booth. So I go back. As we're approaching the booth, it's the first time it hits me like, oh, this is the Brandon. This is his work. And I just kind of like stood there. We took photos. His work was incredible. Even the work had gotten better and stronger. And I'm like, Brandon, how did you do it? Like, how are you a decade later showing at Art Basel? And he's like, honestly, I just never stopped working. I never stopped making work. And you guys, this was just like, I had full body chills. I think it's such a great lesson from Art Basel, but also just the whole season of Building Boldly. And anytime you're working on your creative life or creative journey, that's it, basically. Just, don't stop making work. That it's consistency. And I feel like consistency doesn't always have this, it's not as sexy as launching, but the truth is it's the difference between making it and not making it. So that was such an amazing lesson that I am definitely taking with me from the festival. So overall, it was part creative reset, part just reminder to be consistent, and then also just reconnecting with old friends and contacts and colleagues. So my takeaway for Art Basel for you and is like, show up at events. Arushi on an episode talked about this.
Show up to exclusive places and ask your friends to take you to other exclusive places that you don't have access to. Don't let ego get in your way.
Be accessible, be in the room, go to stuff, show up, be in community. I feel like these are all lessons for us this year as part of the podcast, and then just overall being together and taking it into the next year. So attending Art Basel was part glow up, part creative reset. And these are the things I want to mention that I got from the festival that I am taking with me into the new year. So first is to keep showing up into rooms that your future self feels like they belong in, even before you feel ready or you're formally invited. The second is that your earlier work can bear fruit. So seeing that Art All Night DNA show up with Brandon. that creative trips and being in community count as work and soul care. I came back more energized and feeling full and committed for 2026. This year, I launched a YouTube channel, a podcast, and submitted a book proposal. And my takeaway after this weekend was really just keep committed to the work for 2026. So we cut from the dance floor in Miami to an intimate conference room in Washington. Right after I left Miami, I went to DC for a conference called Frontlines of Freedom, where I literally was in a small group of about 40 people, generals, dissidents, and American senators, all talking about the future of American democracy. So one conversation in particular really stayed with me. It was a Stanford professor who studies misinformation online as it relates to politics. And this is what she said. If you care about democracy and truth, you cannot opt out of the online conversation. The people spreading disinformation are organized, loud, and very online. This hit me because we're so used to hearing that social media is toxic and stay offline and keep your sanity. But she was basically naming this other truth, which is that if we who care about truth and democracy and freedom are not active and visible online, we really cede the public square and cede public space to those who are more organized and have more extreme views. This really hit me as someone who launched a podcast this year, experimented with YouTube. It just made me feel not just okay, but understand that it is important and not frivolous to be online, to be active, and be visible. Now I want to share how Building Boldly came to life. So Building Boldly didn't start as a podcast. It started simply as a resource hub or a funding list for creatives and cultural entrepreneurs. I had received a grant from the California Endowment to produce this funding list. But by year 2, it was clear to me that a list wasn't enough, that people needed stories. They needed to hear how people had made their creative life work and what kind of philanthropic resources they may have used. So we put together a team, a producer who was a friend of a friend, a composer whose work we loved on the Trevor Noah podcast, a great graphic designer who came from a consulting client, and then we found a wonderful podcast studio in Los Angeles. And from there, we filmed 6 episodes, launched on YouTube, and clipped them for socials, and then we launched. So my favorite part was actually the guest selection and these conversations. I think bringing this group together of women that I admire who are successful in their creative ventures was just really inspiring for me personally and professionally. Ultimately, we built a website. We did create the resource hub and that funding list for resources. We recorded the episodes, we experimented with YouTube, tried different things, and we had a great surprise when one of our episodes, the one with Akuya Shabaka, who is the House of Amma designer, her episode actually surpassed 100K views, which was really thrilling. And in the midst of all that, I was also working on a book proposal and also going through IVF. So emotionally, it was just a reminder that things can be a bit more hectic and complicated than they may appear from the outside. And sometimes I would, think to myself, should I be taking on less? Should I get a full-time job that's maybe easier to clock in and clock out? But then I would be reminded, like at Art Basel, when people were so complimentary about clips they'd seen of the podcast, or when someone sent me a DM saying that like the Arushi episode was just what they needed to hear, it definitely answered my why. And it gave me really the fortitude to keep going. Okay, and then I want to quickly walk through some of the best lessons that we learned this year on the podcast. First up is Denise Davis, who reminded us that proof of work creates leverage.
I think sometimes people wait for the check, and I'm always like, no, if you build it, they will come. And so my mentality is, how do you do it with whatever it is that you have at your disposal?
Right.
Even if it's like, I don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I do believe that if it exists, it's so much easier for people to really want to support and stand behind, because then you're already doing it,
Yeah,
right? And it
yeah.
doesn't feel like I need you. Now it's
Right.
like, you want to be a part of this or no?
That instead of waiting for the big green light, you make the work exist. Once something is real, on screen, on paper, and online, people can see it, they can react to it, and it makes it easier for them to support it. Then there was Lillian Shalom. Learn by doing, then close the gaps.
I jumped into it.
Yeah.
I would walk into jewelers' offices in downtown LA and, what do you do? What do you do? And they just look at me like, who is this child? There was a lot of errors I made, and
Yeah.
I ended up watching a lot of YouTube videos and collecting books and asking a lot of questions. And then I ended up taking a GIA course in New York just so I could understand diamonds and stones a little bit better. But when it came to designing, it was really just self-taught.
Lillian didn't wait to understand every corner of the jewelry industry before starting. She learned by jumping in, going door to door to see and meet different jewelers. Then she went back to deepen her craft. She also designed her business around her reality, made to order, one piece at a time, so she wasn't drowning in inventory. And then there was Tara Tan. Learn the systems that shape what gets built.
I think the way I see it in my work is I see capital as a tool. It really is a amplifier, and there's immense power in it. And I feel like if you can channel it in the right way, it brings the right ideas to life.
Tara shifted my thinking around capital. Instead of just critiquing the system, she learned how it works so she could use capital as an amplifier for the ideas she wanted to see in the world. And then there was Akwiya Shabaka. Treat your curiosity like a real business. Akwiya started House of Amma early as a teenager, and every step of the way, she honored that curiosity. She tested, she experimented, and she put her work out there. The other thing she did is she pivoted. When the market felt saturated with certain kinds of African prints, she didn't change her mission. She changed her lens. She responded to and leaned into a different part of her identity, Black Americana, and continued to use archives and family stories to drive her work.
It's a continual journey for my mother and I of exploring who we are as people, as Black people, and just what that means for us.
Then there was Arushi Kapoor. Access is something you cultivate. From Arushi, I keep thinking of that bold cold call she made to get her dream partner.
I saw Mauricio on TV one day, and I cold called him. And he ended up actually picking up the cold call. And it was very intentional for me to do this. I saw him as my business partner because I saw very similar principles that we operated in. And we started speaking. I asked him for lunch, and I started telling him about my vision, and we aligned on what the future of the art world should be.
And her clarity around showing up, being at fairs like Art Basel, dinners, and in new rooms is just part of the job for any creative or entrepreneur. And then finally, there was Elise. Embrace change and ask for help.
Always lean towards taking more risks and this idea that change is good, and that change can be like such a generative force in our lives, and to not be afraid of it, to sort of like lean into it.
Her ability to change course and pivot in her media career, from local newsrooms to covering K-beauty and Seoul to writing a book and then even starting her own podcast company. She said that she just continued to follow animating questions, her curiosity, what drove her. And then embracing change as an energizing force, something that you go with willfully and see what comes out of it. And then asking for help, no matter where you are and at what stage in your career. These conversations, of course, made for great, diverse episodes. They were kind of my dream guests for the first season of Building Boldly. All independent, ambitious women who are really building their own creative ventures, but also on their own terms. And it helped me think through two brands I'm building, Wax and Gold, my media company, and this podcast. And I hope it was helpful for you too. As we close out the year and we think about our Building Boldly season and our creative community, our builders, I want to pose one final reflective question. What is the boldest move you've made this year? We'd love to hear them. Please tag us, send it to us via Instagram or email, and we'll be happy to repost. And if this year left you exhausted or just stretched thin, I also want to say that you have done enough to be worthy of rest. You are allowed to close the year without solving any more problems. In the new year, we can talk about big plans and bold goals and experiments. But for now, let's honor the work that all of us have done together. Thank you. That goes for both of you guys, Denisha and Maha, too. It was a very important point. You can keep that on. No, true. Honestly, this is the big takeaway of this episode. Like, you need to be active. You need to be online because don't think that it's beneath you. Truly.